Every Thursday at this time, we shed light on or support and champion people and organisations doing amazing work in our communities. We celebrate our everyday heroes. Today, we're joined by two guests from the National Institute for the Deaf. We wanted to speak to them in light of the historic win of our new Miss South Africa, Mia Roux, who is hearing impaired. But we also wanted to talk more broadly about inclusivity for the deaf and hearing impaired community and to understand better the challenges facing members of that community. And I'm delighted to be speaking to Chief Sign Language Officer at the National Institute for the Deaf, Lynette Victor, and also Dirkie Ebersohn, Content Development Manager at NID, who is also hearing impaired. And they join us via Zoom now. I'm going to start with you, Lynette. I believe that the National Institute for the Deaf was established in 1881, a really long time ago. Give us a little bit of background.
Yes, hi, SJ. Thank you so much for having us on. We are very, very happy to be on. Yes, 1881. We are, I believe, this oldest organization for the deaf in South Africa. And we are very proud of the services that we render and the things that we do for the deaf community. We have different departments on our campus based in Worcester, one being the NID Care Services, where we have for the multiple disabled deaf adults and also the elderly deaf. And it's like a mini town that they have there. They sleep, eat, fellowship, communicate. It's amazing. And then we have the Sign Language Center where we develop SSL resources, do SSL training online, promote deaf inclusivity, create awareness, especially with September month being month for the deaf as well. We make people aware of the deaf community, deafness, what it is about, and to be inclusive as well.
Do you receive any funding, Lynette?
We do not. We do receive a very, very small percentage from the government, but we have a department whose focus is to raise funds for specific projects, especially for the residents, that we have to be able to feed them, to be able to give toiletries, the needed things that they need every month or every day. And then also we have a second-hand shop, Fabulous Finds, on our premises. It's becoming a very well-known shop in Worcester, but all those funds that we raise there also goes to the support of the deaf residents at our care facility as well. So that's our main goal, to raise funds as well.
In terms of the breadth of your work, Lynette, I would imagine that it is divided between those people who perhaps were born hearing impaired and those maybe who have lost their hearing later in life.
Yes, I just want to clarify that there's the term hearing impaired doesn't have being used anymore.
Okay.
Talk about deaf. There's small letter D and then also capital letter D, which brings where Mia, of course, is the small letter D. It means that she doesn't make use of sign language as her primary communication method. The capital letter D, for instance, is primary language is South African Sign Language, meaning they were born deaf or became deaf prelingual, so meaning before they acquire any language. And that's the differences between that. And then also, of course, as Mia, she prefers to communicate lip reading, speech reading, but being hard of hearing, she can communicate but without using sign language. But there's a big group of deaf people that make use of South African Sign Language as well. So yeah, there's different groups, different levels, different communication methods. So it's a very, very diverse, unique, special group.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. That was
Pleasure.
new to me. I wasn't aware of that. Okay, so depending on little letter D or a capital letter D depends on how you communicate the difference.
Yes.
Okay, I've got you. Thanks very much indeed. If you are just joining us this morning at 10:42, we are joined by two people from the National Institute for the Deaf. The voice you've just heard is that of Lynette Victor, who is the Chief Sign Language Officer. We're also joined by Dirkie Ebersohn, who is the Content Development Manager. Dirkie, I'm going to go to you now, and I should just say, folks, that Dirkie is going to be, we have an interpreter who is going to be speaking on or interpreting for for Dirkie. So, Dirkie, let me ask you firstly, the win for Mia. What does that mean for members of the deaf community? It was a historic win. It's the first time we've seen somebody who is deaf taking up this or winning this really significant competition. What does that mean? Good to have you with us, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Usually these competitions you have nationally, people with disabilities have their own competitions, like for the deaf, for the blind. So they're not included within the broader hearing community. So it's more disability focused. So it's not that we label them. It's also like a normal level. So very few people choose to enter in these competitions. So if it's a special group like for deaf, for blind, for people with disabilities, to have access is a problem. So Mia was very she had it and she went for it. It didn't matter for her whether she had to lip read. So she was very determined. And the modeling skills, and also the TV, we had the interpreter on the screen. So deaf people could feel part of this whole occasion and be part of Mia's win. So even though I'm a capital letter D or small letter D, it was a win for the deaf community. So it's one step in the right direction. So it doesn't matter. It means that people can enter these competitions, have hope for these competitions. Not only seeing that I only have the deaf competition or only the blind competition.
And there's also it's also promoting the access and creating awareness and giving a platform for people to become aware, to give access and be inclusive, because the deaf people usually, like everyday life, is feeling excluded. So to have being included gives a step for us to, as an example for her, being a role model, to look up to and give that access as well.
I wonder if also what is significant, and we spoke to Mia on the Sunday morning after her win, and I was saying to my producer, so how is this going to work? Does she have a hearing aid? She obviously can't lip read because we didn't have her on the Zoom on that occasion. And she actually said, oh, you're all moving around screens. Okay, there's she actually said, that she was a little bit anxious to do that telephone interview, but even that in and of itself, the fact that we now have this person who represents members of the deaf community or is in the deaf community, so she might not agree that she represents the deaf community, is that we now, as the media, we now need to think, how inclusive are we? How easy is it for people who are differently abled to access our platforms and be included in the conversations that we are having? Dirkie, maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yes, just to give an example, like today's interview. Lynette is the chief, and I am one of. So Lynette is my boss. So we had a nice discussion to say we need to have a person that can represent the deaf community, that can talk on behalf of the deaf community. But radio is not really accessible to the deaf community. So how can I be part of this? So then within Zoom, I can be part of this. So this is an example how you can include deaf people, to arrange an interpreter, to make the platform on Zoom so that we can still participate like we have currently. It's not like an excuse, sorry, we cannot do this, it's radio, deaf people it's not accessible for deaf people. But there is ways and means that we can achieve this.
Totally agree.
Thank you very much for your radio station making this possible.
It's our absolute pleasure. What would be this, and either of you, Lynette or Dirkie, can take this question. What are some of the most pressing issues then that the deaf community in South Africa faces, do you think? And how can the increased awareness from events like Miss South Africa help to address these challenges so that people who are deaf are better represented, better understood, their needs are better understood, and there is accessibility and inclusivity? And either one of you can dive in for that one.
Dirkie, I think South Africa itself, there's a mental health issue. Doesn't matter whether you're deaf or hearing. There's a big mental health issue. People that doesn't work, the economy being as bad as it is. And remember, being deaf alone and having stress, mental health issues, it's a double disability and a double impact on their mental health. Going to hospital to communicate with the doctors, going to the pharmacist, getting their medication, or going to a psychologist, just explaining your problems. So we need more accessibilities in these things. And this is really a big concern in our area.
Yes. Can I add to that, SJ?
Please.
That's very true. I agree with Dirkie, because everyday life for the deaf is not always accessible. So they have that extra amount of stress, which also then gives extra strain on the mental health and depression and so forth. Now, for a deaf person, just to create a short, quick scenario, for a deaf person to go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, they need to communicate, be able to communicate. But now they aren't able. So now they need to have a third party, being an interpreter, coming in with kept secrets. Now they want to share them. Now they want the feelings to be shared with two people. It's already scary for one person. So, and also another thing I just quickly want to say is one time, Dirkie also told me, and some deaf people say that if we as hearing enter a room full of deaf people, who then is then disabled? If you think about that, the hearing person will not be able to communicate with the deaf as well. So I think it's a vice versa. To shorten the bridge, it must be from both sides being inclusive.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying on that front. And so in that regard, let's talk a little bit about what we can do. I mean, even just picking up some basic sign language presumably is helpful. I mean, Dirkie, when you come across somebody who is a hearing person and they're able to sign, even if it's just a little bit and they're doing horribly, what's your response to that? Do you feel encouraged that here's somebody or a situation where an effort is being made to connect?
Yes, definitely. I have that experience before. Like each Friday, I go to a restaurant at the mall and I drink some coffee there. So the waiter, now I have the same waiter. So then I will say a coffee, cold milk, and it's the same as how I order it. And each Friday I'm there. So the waiter now comes to me and says, cold milk? And then I already goes like, yes. So it's nice having them responding to me, having that connection. Even in the shops, many shops where I buy things, the cashiers now will say thank you afterwards. And deaf people are so excited even when they see the thank you. It's their attitudes towards us, making it more accessible. And then that's the reason why I will go back to that place, because I feel included and supported.
Yeah. If you are just joining us this morning, we are talking to Lynette Victor, who is the Chief Sign Language Centre Officer at the National Institute for the Deaf, and also Dirkie Ebersohn, who is the Content and Development Manager, and Nicoline du Toit is the voice that you hear from Convo ZA, who is interpreting for Dirkie. We've got Tina on the line. I've been asking you this morning, in light of the conversation that we are having this morning, if you are somebody who is differently abled, what are some of the challenges that you face, and what are some of the barriers to inclusivity that you face, and perhaps also in terms of how your particular disability is misunderstood, misrepresented. Tina joins us on the line now. Tina, you live with multiple sclerosis. What can you add to our conversation this morning? Good to have you with us.
I can Society of South Africa, as well as the rare diseases, and I'm an ambassador for MS. And it's very interesting. We share exactly the same concerns that were raised earlier. Firstly, awareness. Awareness is absolutely huge. Secondly, would be the misinterpretation or misunderstanding. Thirdly, yes, is funding, because the communities that represent, or the structures that represent people with a disability, often comes from communities, often comes from people who gather. And so it does take a lot of time and resources that you have to create ways of assisting people with MS, for example. And then the other element that was mentioned earlier is the mental health issues as well. So you're living with a particular disability, in this case MS, and on top of that you have to manage your mental health and stress, which can often affect people in their work environment. So it's interesting that when we maybe use the term disability, I think maybe across, I know we're talking for the deaf community, but I think multiple disability areas share very similar challenges, as was mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Tina. I think that's a really interesting point, is that the solution to those challenges might be different in terms of meeting needs, but many of the challenges are the same. Just finally, before we wrap up, if there are people who are listening in who perhaps have been impacted by any of the conversation that we've had in the last 20 minutes, whether they are somebody who is deaf and they don't feel that they have the support, maybe they are parents of a child, hearing parents of a deaf child who don't feel they have their support, maybe they're an employer who runs a business who wants to know how they can support somebody or a deaf staff member, or just even if they don't yet have somebody who is working for them who is deaf, but they would like to make that a possibility. What would you like to say to them? I'll start, Dirkie, if I may, with you, and we'll finish off with Lynette.
I think people needs to be more involved, not only financially, but for example, Deaf Awareness Month is in September. Go and support them. See what it is. Maybe they are doing a casual day sticker, or they are fundraising. Maybe just paying 20 Rand or 10 Rand for the sticker, and then that will give the organization more funding as well. It's like simple things, just to show that you do support through having the sticker. Or like Cancer Month, you have that ribbon, just giving the support to the deaf community. But also people supporting us and we supporting them in the same time. So we need to be active, see how things are being passive and looking at things and not really supporting them. It's not really helping. And we don't want to beg. We want to do things, and we want to support either side.
Yeah. Lynette, I did say I was going to give you the last word, but I'm not, because I don't have time. I'm so sorry. But thank you very much indeed. We really appreciate your time this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you all with us. Dirkie Ebersohn, who is the Content Development Manager, and Lynette Victor, who is Chief Sign Language Centre Officer at the National Institute for the Deaf, and Nicoline du Toit from Convo South Africa, who has been interpreting for Dirkie. Thank you all for joining us. An absolute pleasure to have you.